Hello, and welcome back to Sacred Wellness, a space where we explore healing, embodiment, and what it truly means to come home to yourself. Today's conversation is one that so many people carry quietly, but we don't always feel safe talking about, and that is our relationship with food and our relationship with our body. And even the deeper truth is that some relationships are often connected so much more than we see on the surface. And I say this all the time is, the world is comprised of so much more than just what we see with our two eyes. Today I'm joined by Adina, an author, board certified health coach, and teacher of private and group yoga and meditation classes. Her work centers around helping people mend their relationship with food and their body. What I love about her approach is that it's not about control. It's not about restriction. It's about reconnection, something very near and dear to my heart. Reconnection with the self, understanding, and coming back into alignment with yourself. Adina, I'm so honored to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm equally honored to be here, and I couldn't have done a better job than what you just did explaining everything.
Oh, well, thank you. I want
Yeah,
to start, there's a lot to cover, and we do
yeah.
go only about 20, 25 minutes. So I want to start with oh, I can't speak, the root of our relationship with food and body. And so many people struggle with food or body image and, being a woman, and I know it starts very young age. But where do you see the root often is the most of where these struggles come from?
I definitely think the root is environment and culture, right? So family, yes, but family is a smaller part of a larger culture and what we're led to believe about how we should look and how we should eat and what that represents, right? That's all taught to us. And with each lesson, we move further and further away from self connection and intuition and trust. And so body and food relationship become continuously damaged every day when we hear diet culture messaging, which is so it's so prevalent not in our society, but it's not just something we hear; it's something we breathe, it's something we live, we see it, we hear it. I mean, it's soaked into every cell that's in us, really. So it's an uphill battle at times.
Yeah, and I think the conditioning starts so young, right? We
So
remember
yeah,
being young teenager and I remember looking back on it now, I was like, oh, I was so skinny. I was like 110 pounds, but I didn't think I was skinny then. And it's like because, what we're shown and what we're conditioned to actually believe what skinny is.
right. And I I think the dangerous part also is that it goes one step further. Like this is the ideal definition of beauty. This is what skinny is, and we know that like skinny now is the we're coming back to that full circle of that being the ideal beauty standard. So it's not even looking the role, it's what it signifies. Like if you are skinny, you have it all together and you have your life, under control and you're disciplined and you're, virtuous. So it's the definition of beauty and then what it represents. And that's what we're
Yeah.
taught. You're right, at a very young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about midlife.
Oh,
And where that has to happen in midlife, because that's something near and dear to my heart now as I'm going through these midlife changes. But hormone shift, energy shifts, identity shifts, and we're in the middle of this going, what the hell is this all going on with my body and my mind and my soul? So, how does midlife actually impact the relationship women have with their body? Can you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely. And it's a great question. So, if we have never come to terms with our relationship with food and body, if we've never mended it, if we are not at peace with food and body, then the natural changes of life hit us very hard. And then we're still stuck in that struggle mode of, fighting food, fighting body all the time. You can see it when you go from a kid to a young adult, and all of a sudden your body changes, right? That's an adjustment. So this is one of the many adjustments of life. Your body changes, you gain weight, things shift, right? And it's about, well, how do you accept that and still feel good in your body? And we're not talking of menopause as, okay, now it's an excuse to be, we're not talking about that. We're talking about that you're still at a healthy, healthy weight. And that just how we define that is all messed up too. But let's just use that piece of conversation. You're at a healthy weight. You're taking care of yourself, and yet your body is not the same as it used to be. Well, yeah, hello. I mean, welcome to life, right? We get gray hairs, we get wrinkles, we get, some body shifting and weight shifting, and so much time and energy and focus is invested in what really doesn't warrant that kind of attention. Right?
Mhm.
Life is short. We should be enjoying life.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and going through it myself now, it's like connecting with so many different women in this space now for this past year that I've been doing this topic, just how much they just dread it or it's not talked about or it's something like my own mom was even like, oh, I never had menopause, or we didn't even discuss it like hot flashes. Oh my gosh, it's like
Yeah.
everything was really like hidden away back then, like everything else was, and we shoved our feelings down and we didn't feel them. But nowadays it's so much, we're so much more open about it and what we're going through and what we're experiencing. And I think that's wonderful for people to understand this place because it is a shift and change that can be really inundating
Yeah.
if you focus on the negative aspects or what you want to call the negative aspects, like
Right.
cortisol. I never had a belly. All of a sudden, I got this belly. I'm like, where the hell did you come from? So you're
Yeah.
like looking at your body and it's hard not to be negative, right? But you're like, okay, what am I going to do with this now? Because obviously this means something for me. And a lot of what I do with my work is intuitive work. So what does it mean with the body, the mind, and the soul? Can you talk a little bit about how they all tie together
Yeah.
in this being that, because this human experience that we're having is not easy.
No, it is not easy. And I agree with you. Things are talked about more openly now, and that's great. But, while it's being talked about, the diet culture messaging is still there, right?
Yes.
It still leads us away from us. And so, this body, mind, soul connection that you speak of, that really can only be attained if you're at, again, peace with your food and body relationship and how you nourish yourself, right? And how you nourish yourself practically during the day and spiritually, and how much are you following a script, and how much are you tuning in and really listening to body. What does your body need? What does your mind really need to set your soul on fire?
Yeah.
And if we don't really create the space for that, and we don't live in a world that encourages that, we're kind of going through life feeling really heavy, not just heavy in body, but just heavy in mind and spirit.
Yeah, I would agree, especially the world that we live in today that is so distracted and just so fast paced and
Oh,
we're
yeah.
so used to going, going, going. And I lived that world too when I had younger children, the first time around, but it was like just constantly you're bombarded with all of these roles that we play and we're going, going from, I remember going to baseball and basketball
Yeah.
sometimes we didn't get home till 7 o'clock at night, but that constant bombardment. And today it even seems so much more fast paced because of all the phone access we have, the internet
Right.
access.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I don't see life slowing down at all. In fact, I see it speeding up, probably even more. And it's interesting, you bring up your kids. Like, if I could go back and do it again, as probably every mom would, I would do it so much slower, so much, easier, more pauses, less doing, more being, so hopefully we learn from that, and we have the ability to slow our lives down a little bit and really look at the things that light us up and the things that drag us down.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had the chance to do over. I had my daughter 19 years after my first son was born.
Oh, wow. Yes, you did.
So
Well,
I got the do-over, and I have to tell you, they say to me this all the time, like, you're such a totally different person. And I am. I found spirituality, yoga, Reiki,
yeah.
those things totally transform my life. Can you talk a little bit about yoga and what that does, not only to the body, but to the mind and the soul in that connection you were talking about slowing down with?
Yeah. I mean, before I found yoga, I was a hardcore runner, right? So if I wasn't suffering and sore, it wasn't a workout. A friend of mine actually dragged me to my first yoga class, kicking and screaming. And I remember coming up to the teacher, and she would remember this too. I was like, I want to feel sore after this workout. And she was such a good sport. She's like, oh, you got it. And I actually did feel sore, which is what kept me coming back. So at first it was a very physical practice for me. But the more that I got into it, then I started like yearning for more. I was like, wait, there's
Mm,
something more to this. And I had my own struggles, happening at the time, and I decided to become a yoga teacher, really to get into the philosophy of it. uh I did my 200 hours, then I did my 300 hours. So, and I just, once I became certified, I was working like all the time, so this became a
mm,
very big part of my life. And I don't think I could do my job as a health coach, helping not only women, but it tends to be primarily women, heal their food and body relationship without yogic philosophy behind me,
hmm.
and knowing how to practice mindfulness, and how to insert a pause, and how to be present, and how to actually breathe through it and sit through discomfort. So
Yeah.
my yogic background heavily influences my work with people, women, children, teens, the whole spectrum there, in healing their food and body relationship. It's very yogic infused, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I do yoga nidra at the independent living over here, and you'd be amazed.
Oh,
You wouldn't think that the older generation would be into it, and they love it. They're like, "Could you come every day?"
yeah, that's one of my most favorite meditation techniques, and I do. I've received. I don't offer any meditation that hasn't resonated with me personally,
Hmm.
and I love yoga nidra, and I teach it quite often. I
Yeah.
actually do a 25-hour training for yoga teachers to get that under their belt when they're moving towards their 300 hours. So such a great technique. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and with proven scientific, you know I mean, the government was using those techniques for,
Yes.
yeah. So
And think about, the older generation, they like midlife, they have a harder time sleeping. And
mm,
so when you do a yoga nidra session with them, they're just so relaxed. So, like you can see the energy, I can see the energy emanating from them, how relaxed and peaceful they are.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you see in people when something shifts within them, when they start to slow down, they start to connect in a way that they've not connected before. What do you see?
I, you know, I, so it's interesting because what one person's definition of slowing down and taking a pause might vary very much from somebody else's. And right. So it's not about imposing this one universal or uniform standard definition of slowing down. So when that person finds their space, right? And I hear this all the time from my clients, and not to toot my own horn, but it is in all my testimonials. They tell me that the work they've done with me is life transforming. And that is what I see. It transforms your life when you learn how to slow down enough to connect to yourself, to read your body, to read your hunger cues, to trust. Right? That's empowerment. That is a tool that doesn't go away, that allows you to ride the waves of change, at menopause, all those changes of life. Once you have that skill set in you, it is life transforming. It's life changing because that's something that you can always rely on. It's not a plan outside of yourself. It's like, oh, I have the inner wisdom, I have the knowledge, I can do this, right?
Yes.
You're not living at 50 the way you did at 20, and you're not living at 70 the way you did at 50, right? So it's about taking even grander pauses sometimes and tuning in. Like, what does my movement look like? What does my food look like now? Oh, I can adapt if I just slow down and listen. I have to listen,
Yes.
right? That's challenging.
Well, yeah, it's like that piece where you can start to hear yourself, like with negative thinking. I used to, back in the day when I first started my spiritual journey, it was like, okay, so, all I have to do is be aware of those negative thoughts.
Yep.
And at that time, I actually thought I was a positive person until I started to become aware of those negative thoughts that I had. And it's like, oh, wow, maybe I'm not so positive when it comes to how I feel about myself.
Right.
So I think, yeah, people unless they start doing it for themselves. And I always describe it as this toolkit, right? We have our own toolkit that works for us. I say this on the show all the time is that what resonates with me may not resonate with you, and it's different for everybody. We're just giving you ideas and tools that you can use for yourself. But talk a little bit about those patterns you see in people, how they actually speak to themselves and how they can start to begin. Because awareness, I feel like, is the first step to become aware of this narrative that we talk to ourselves. And that goes in hand with slowing down so we can hear ourselves, be able
Yes.
to hear ourselves talking to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean the patterns are, if you look at patterns among people, it's not encouraging because we all have this tendency to talk so harshly to ourselves, and we get so
Yes.
in cycles of negative thought, and nobody is immune to that, right? So I 100% agree with you. We're on the same page. I mean, the first step is awareness. And I mean, I did just publish my book, and it's called now I have When Food Isn't the Fix: A 12-Step Guide to Survive Like Emotional Eating. I have so many titles in my head, but the first step in that book, it's not a diet, it's awareness. It is awareness. It's being aware of the thought patterns, and maybe it's getting them down on paper, and it's looking at it, and it's really confronting, like, wow, I remember saying this once, but I didn't realize I said this like 100 times today, and breaking, why did I say them, what was happening at the moment, and is this really truth, or is this the byproduct of my story? So I agree with you. Awareness. I don't think anything we can't build on anything unless we're first aware of it.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure how aware we are of how negatively we sometimes take care of ourselves, because again, we're stuck in this hamster wheel of move, 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 do, do, do. Yeah. I hope
Yeah.
to answer the question.
It's really a hard space to get into for a lot of people. When I
Oh
was
yeah.
working in my office in Sedona, I would see a lot of clients from LA, and so LA is even busier than Phoenix. So they would come in, and I can't slow down, I can't make the time. Of course, now they're in Sedona and they're on this retreat and they're having this beautiful time, and they see how beautiful it is to slow down, but they take back with them this narrative that they can't slow down because if they slow
Right.
down, their whole world will stop. And I
Right.
think
Right.
we're so conditioned to actually believe that, like, if we lost our job today, that would be it. The company would fold. Well, that's not the case.
Right. I mean, you bring up a really important point, because of course the crucial aspect is awareness, but it's awareness and then examining your story, which is what you just spoke to, and that story is connected to core beliefs. So I think it's really about challenging those core beliefs about food, about body, about life. Like, you're right. I mean, what does it mean? Like, what's our core belief around doing more? Do we think it's virtuous? Do we think it's like, what have we been fed? What story have we taken as our own that maybe shouldn't be our own? So how do we deconstruct that story? If we're going to deconstruct that story, we have to look at core beliefs, like, well, what does
Yes.
this say about us, right? And also, again, it comes back to self-trust. We're taught not to trust our intuition when it comes to food. I mean, it's the same thing throughout life. It's that fear. Oh my gosh, what if I lost my job, right? And we don't have that trust. Like, oh, I can handle that change,
Yes.
right? Right. So it's, it all comes back to those values that make us who we are, and maybe they're pure, or maybe they got clouded along the way.
Yeah, because some you think about it, right? Working hard, you're a hard worker. For many years, I believed I was a hard worker, but that also meant that I wasn't allowing myself to rest because if I rested, I
Right.
would consider myself to be lazy.
Easy, right.
So they could be like maybe, like you said, a core belief that it is not necessarily a bad belief, but
Hmm.
then when it ties into the rest of your life and you look at it and you examine it and do self-reflection, where does that really take away from other areas of your life? And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about and a lot of what you're talking about in your book. Where can my listeners and watchers, followers find your book?
You can find me on Amazon,
Okay.
Kindle and paperback. I guess just look up Adina Kelman.
Okay.
When food isn't the fix. That's the first part of the title.
When
And the
food
second
isn't.
part is, 12 step survival guide to end emotional eating. I'm putting out an event with a different title, so I might have fused those two. But yeah, it's just, I mean, to the point that you just made, and in the book, one of the steps beyond self awareness is, like you said, a core belief. And it's not necessarily bad or good; it's what it is. In the book, it talks about what are the characteristics that, in one situation, in one context, help you, but in another context, don't serve you.
Yeah.
Right. So again, examination, awareness.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Adina. Every listener could walk away today with what we've shared and what's in your book. I want to thank you for bringing your gentleness and your honesty and your healing perspective to Sacred Wellness today. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time and sharing you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My absolute pleasure.
And I will be back next week with another guest sharing all the juicy aspects of sacred wellness in midlife. Thank you for joining me today.